She was my whole world, and I didn't even realize how much until the morning I got the call that she was gone. My daughter Iris had built something remarkable in her 38 years on this earth. After her mother passed from ovarian cancer when Iris was just 14, it was the two of us against everything, against the landlord who kept raising our rent in that small house in Decatur, Georgia, against the school counselor who told her community college was more realistic for a girl like her, against every single person who looked at a single father working double shifts at a logistics warehouse and assumed his kid would amount to nothing. She proved them all wrong. By the time she was 32, Iris owned 3 high-end interior design studios, one in Atlanta, one in Nashville, one in Charlotte. She had contracts with hotel chains, corporate offices, a few luxury residential developers. I used to sit at my kitchen table looking at her Instagram page and think, how did someone like me produce someone like her? I'd raised her on frozen dinners and Saturday morning cartoons and second-hand textbooks from library sales, and she turned into this force of nature. The man she married was named Holden. I'll be honest with you, I never liked him. There was something about the way he smiled that never reached his eyes. You know the type. The kind of man who shakes your hand just a little too firmly, like he's trying to establish something. He'd come from money, old Georgia family money, the kind that makes people lazy in ways they don't even notice. He had an MBA he barely used and a fondness for golf and expensive bourbon and telling stories about himself in groups of 3 or more people. Iris loved him anyway. She told me once that he made her feel steady. Dad, she said, you know how I always feel like I'm running? Like there's always another goal, another project? When I'm with Holden, I actually stop. I didn't know how to argue with that. I just nodded and said I was happy for her. They were married for 6 years. The last 2 of those years I barely saw her. She'd call, we'd talk, but there was something guarded in her voice that hadn't been there before. I know now what I didn't know then. I know now that he was chipping away at her slowly, the way certain people do, isolating her from the people who knew her best, making small comments about her decisions, her friendships, her relationship with me, making her doubt herself in ways so subtle she couldn't even name them. When the divorce came, it was Iris who filed. She called me the night before she submitted the paperwork. Her voice was different, lighter somehow even through the exhaustion. She said, Dad, I'm finally stopping the right way. Holden fought the divorce hard. He wanted half of everything. He had his family lawyer draft up claims that the businesses had been built partially on his connections and his family's social network. The case dragged on for 14 months. At the end of it, the court awarded him a settlement, $240,000, and nothing else. No ownership stake, no future earnings. His lawyers had overplayed their hand and Iris's attorney had been meticulous. He took the money and disappeared. No goodbye, no acknowledgement, nothing. Gone. That was 9 years ago. Iris rebuilt. She expanded the Charlotte studio, opened a 4th location in Savannah, started a mentorship program for young women from low-income backgrounds who wanted careers in design. She bought herself a house in Buckhead. She called me every Sunday without fail, and sometimes on random Wednesday afternoons just to tell me something that made her laugh that day. We went to Hilton Head together every August for a week, just the 2 of us, the way we used to take cheap road trips when she was in high school. Life was good. Life was genuinely good. Then she got sick. It started with fatigue she couldn't shake, then a persistent cough. By the time she went to the doctor, my daughter, who scheduled client consultations 3 months out but avoided her own annual checkups, it was stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer. She had never smoked a day in her life. The oncologist explained that it didn't matter, that this type didn't discriminate that way. I moved in with her 2 weeks after the diagnosis. I told her I was just going to help with the house while she was doing chemo. She saw right through me but didn't argue. What came next was the hardest 18 months of my life. Harder than losing her mother, harder than the early years of raising her alone. Because this time I could see exactly what was being taken and I couldn't do a single thing to stop it. I watched my daughter, who used to be in constant motion, who used to send me voice memos at midnight because she'd just had an idea she had to say out loud. I watched her get quieter and stiller and smaller, and I sat with her through all of it. I brought her soup she could barely eat. I drove her to infusion appointments. I watched old movies with her on the living room couch, with a blanket over us both, the same way we used to watch movies when she was 11 years old, and the world was simpler. She had prepared for this. That was the thing about Iris. Even in the middle of it, she was thinking. She had a trusted attorney named Morris, who had handled her business affairs for years. In the months after her diagnosis, she met with him multiple times. She updated her will, restructured her estate plan, set up a charitable foundation. She transferred clear title of the business holdings into a trust. She was thorough and deliberate in a way that made my chest ache, because I knew what it meant. She was thinking about what happened after. She left everything to me. The businesses, the house, the investment portfolio. Combined, it was valued just under $31 million. She also left a letter. She gave it to Morris to give to me after she passed, because she said she knew she wouldn't be able to say it to my face without breaking down. I still have that letter in the top drawer of my nightstand. I've read it more times than I can count. Iris died on a Thursday morning in March. She was 38 years old. I held her hand. The months that followed were gray in a way I don't have better words for. I handled the arrangements, received the well wishes, went through the motions. Morris walked me through the estate administration. I tried to understand the businesses well enough to work with the people she'd trusted to run them. There were grief counseling sessions I went to twice and then stopped. There was a lot of sitting in her house, my house now, technically, and not knowing what to do with my hands. I was 7 months into that grief when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, a 404 area code, Atlanta. I almost didn't pick up. "Is this Kenneth?" the voice said. I knew who it was before he even said his name. 9 years, and that voice was exactly the same. "Holden," I said. There was a brief silence, the kind that tells you someone was hoping for a warmer reception. Then he said, "I heard about Iris. I'm sorry for your loss." I didn't say anything. I waited. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the situation, about what she built. I think you'd agree that I played a role in the early years of the business. My family's connections, introductions I made. I just want to have a conversation. Man to man." "What kind of conversation?" I said. It wasn't a question. "I have an attorney who believes I may have a legitimate claim to a portion of the estate. Given the history, I'd rather settle this quietly between us before it becomes a legal matter." I sat with the phone against my ear for a long moment. Outside the window, the neighbor's kid was riding a bike in slow circles on the cul-de-sac. Normal afternoon. Normal world. "You should have that attorney call Morris Gaines," I said. "He handles my daughter's estate." Then I hung up. I called Morris before Holden's lawyer could. I told him exactly what had been said. Morris was quiet for a moment, then said, "Kenneth, I've been waiting for this call." He told me Iris had anticipated this, that she had told him, in one of their planning sessions, that she wouldn't be surprised if Holden surfaced after she was gone, that she had made sure every piece of documentation was airtight, that there was no ambiguity, no opening, nothing that a creative attorney could use to find purchase. But she'd done more than that. Iris had kept records, not just business records, personal records, emails Holden had sent during the divorce that contradicted the claims his attorneys made about his contributions to the business. A notarized statement from a former business partner of his who could speak to the fact that the family connections Holden had claimed credit for had actually materialized into 0 contracts, and 2 embarrassing introductions that Iris had spent months recovering from professionally. She had kept all of it, organized, dated, stored digitally, and in hard copy with Morris. My daughter had known, even then 9 years ago, that he might come back, and she had built a wall against it while she still could. Holden's attorney, a man named Prater who operated out of a mid-sized firm in Buckhead, filed a claim in Fulton County Probate Court 3 weeks later. The legal theory was what Morris described to me as tenuous at best. They argued that Holden's postmarital contributions to Iris's professional network constituted an equitable interest in the business growth that followed. It was the same argument, dressed up in different language, that his attorneys had tried and lost during the divorce. What followed was 4 months of proceedings. Morris brought in a litigation partner. I showed up to every session and sat in the front row. I wanted Holden to see me there. I wanted him to understand that this was not a grieving old man who could be worn down or maneuvered. The first major hearing was in June. Holden arrived in a gray suit that cost more than my first car. He didn't look at me. His attorney presented their position. The network theory, an alleged verbal agreement he claimed Iris had made about future compensation for his professional support. No documentation, no witnesses. A verbal agreement between a divorced couple who had spent 14 months in litigation against each other. Morris cross-examined Holden on the stand for 2 hours. He presented the email records. He walked through the timeline, date by date, showing exactly when each of Iris's major contracts had been secured and demonstrating through business records that none of them traced to any introduction or connection Holden had claimed. He called the former business partner, a man who had known both of them during the marriage, who testified calmly and precisely that Holden's claims of professional contribution had been exaggerated to the point of invention. There was a moment near the end of the second day of testimony when the judge asked Holden's attorney to clarify the specific, documented basis for the verbal agreement claim. The attorney began a long, involved answer. The judge stopped him after 40 seconds. "Counsel," she said, "what I'm hearing is that your client is asserting an oral contract with no corroboration in a dispute over a 9-figure estate. Is that correct?" I saw Holden's jaw tighten from where I was sitting. In August, the judge issued her ruling. The claim was denied in its entirety. The estate stood exactly as Iris had established it. The judge's written opinion noted that the petitioner had failed to demonstrate any credible evidentiary basis for the claim, and that the timing of the petition, filed after the decedent's death, based on alleged verbal agreements from a marriage that had been legally dissolved 9 years prior, was consistent with opportunistic conduct rather than legitimate legal right. Opportunistic conduct. My daughter's words would have been sharper. After the ruling in the hallway outside the courtroom, Holden walked past me without speaking. He had his phone to his ear before he was through the door. I stood there and watched him go, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, exactly. Not even relief. Something quieter. The sense that Iris had still managed to protect what she'd built, even from wherever she was now. I called my son-in-law's bluff, and Iris had already stacked the deck. In September, I met with the Foundation's board for the first time as its steward. The Iris Calloway Foundation, her mother's maiden name, which Iris had kept as her middle name her whole life, was established to fund design education and career placement for young women from low-income households in Georgia, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. The first class of 8 scholarship recipients was announced in October. I sat in the back row of the room where they were introduced, and one by one they stood up and said their names, and I thought about a 14-year-old girl in Decatur who had needed someone to believe in her before she fully believed in herself. I'm 67 years old. I did not expect to be starting over at 67. I did not expect to be learning how to oversee a design business, or sit in on foundation board meetings, or navigate estate litigation. Some days I still walk into Iris's kitchen and forget, for 1/2 second, that she's not going to come around the corner. But here's what I know. My daughter spent the last year of her life making sure that what she built could not be taken from her. She spent that year thinking about other people, the women who would benefit from the foundation, the employees who would keep their jobs, her father who she knew would be lost without a purpose. She thought about all of it. She prepared for all of it. Holden bet that grief would make me soft, that a 67-year-old man with no legal background and a broken heart would be easy to maneuver. He was wrong about my daughter in life, and he was wrong about what she left behind in death. The businesses are running. The foundation is growing. I've kept her Sunday ritual. I call my own brother every Sunday now, something I'd let lapse for years. A small thing. But Iris always said the small things were how you actually built a life. She was my whole world. She still is. Just differently now.